Welcome to A Bit of Board Games, a casual podcast documenting the many failures and hopefully successes of Waffle Games, as we learn the ins and outs of board game design and self-publishing. Join us on this journey as we talk about a bit of life, a bit of design, and a bit of board games. Welcome back to another episode of A Bit of Board Games. This episode 70, and it is August 23rd, 2023. There we go. And I'm Steven, your host, and with us today is Ralph, art director, cool guy. Just announced that he's hotter than Jesse, at least in terms of our audio levels. And that brings us to our other person, our special guest of the show today, which is not Trevor, because he's not here, but it's Jesse, who has been here before, but it's been a long time. Welcome, Jesse.
What is up? Thanks for having me.
So, the reason Jesse is here today is because last night for us, earlier this week, or earlier in the past, whenever you may be listening to this episode, we did our first virtual playtest of Foundry on Tabletop Simulator. Ralph's first time playing the game, even though he's been working on it for months now with us. And Jesse's first time playing the game, which I've told him about it. He's known about it, but this is the first time anyone's been able to test it remotely. So we did that. We initially treated that as if it was our podcast recording, and then I was just going to cut a bunch of it out. But it ended up going for like 3 hours total for our recording. The game did not take that entire time. But we're like, that's going to be way too much to edit down to a reasonable like podcast length. So we decided to just do kind of like a what did you call it, Ralph? What were you calling it?
Aftermath.
Yeah, the aftermath, post-mortem.
An after-action report, if you will.
After action. Yeah. This is...
because there was action.
Oh, yeah. It was pretty nuts. So yeah, we just wanted to talk about how that playtest went. And then if you want to see the entire playtest, the entire recording, that 3-hour recording, will be on YouTube for you to watch, skip through, however you want to do it. But it's got our entire game as we went, including pauses when I had to go check on my daughter and different things that went on there with the live stream. But overall, I feel like it was a huge success, guys. What did you think?
I agree. I thought it was very successful. It was very clear that a lot of work and a lot of like attention to detail and the synergy is the word I'm looking for. The synergy of like the cards and the mechanics were really thought out. I thought it was super fun.
Sweet.
Very, very cool. Very fun game to play.
And that's a wrap. So that's our episode, guys. I think we're
Love it.
No.
Nailed it.
Ralph, so having worked on the game for a bit and not playing it and like hearing us talk about it and being in discussions about different rules and different mechanics and different things, how did it compare to what you thought it was going to be? And then how was your experience playing your first ever board game?
Oh, I'm so glad I got to finally play it.
Yeah.
I had a great time. I guess the way it compares, it was interesting. I was weirdly nervous going in. I was like, I've never used Tabletop Simulator. I feel like I'm gonna be overwhelmed. And it just felt like the stakes were high, but but in the end, actually, through Steven's explanation, and I think I was the third person to actually make a play, just observing like 2 turns, it really, you catch on really quick. And I guess the most shocking thing for me was how easy it was to just catch on. And the systems kind of click, and before long, you're making decisions, and you're able to take kind of your own initiative and your own path on how you want to kind of progress. And that was a lot of fun. We all ended up with way different styles.
Yeah,
and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, just my takeaway is I'm so glad I finally got to play it. And a lot of stuff, I've gotten a lot of sort of info piecemeal here and there through working on it, but finally it's kind of it all clicks now, and um, it'll make working on the game kind of more rewarding now too, because I
Sure.
know what the goal is and what it's working
Yeah.
towards. So yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, I know. Yeah, hopefully that will speak into kind of stuff going forward too. So just like you know better what's going on. So like as we're designing
Yeah.
things, you can have more of a justification of, or like I can tell you like, hey, like we're designing it like this. Before you just had to take my word for it, but now you can be like, you've had hands on, and like if you ever want to play it again, to be like, how is this going to work, or like let's play through it a couple rounds just to kind of see how that side of things works. We can do
Hmm.
that now. So
Yeah.
it's great. I'm not gonna lie, it took me a bit to get all the cards on there. Like the other components were pretty easy, but for some reason I had such a pain, such a hard time getting all the cards into Tabletop Simulator, just with trying like.
Actually, I have one technical
Oh
question.
yeah, go ahead.
You exported from InDesign,
Hmm.
and as what type of file?
So okay, so I did different things. So initially I exported everything. Okay, jeez. So I did the data merge stuff and created a
Hmm.
template card, and then I duplicated that project 3 times. There's probably an easier way to do this. And then I did like the basic card template with its background, then the advanced in its own project, and then the
Oh,
mastercraft in its own project. So then that way I could just load in all the basic. Because initially I had all of them in one, but I had something set up wrong, and so then it would like export a basic, advanced, and mastercraft colored version of every single card. So I had like
yeah.
300 cards. I'm like, oh god, okay. So I just found a workaround. So anyway, I exported that as JPEGs,
Thanks.
and then I took those JPEGs and brought them back into InDesign to create like the sheets. So put them in a grid, and then I exported JPEGs again, or PDF, and a PDF of like the full card sheets of all the cards together to like that I would print.
The reason I'm asking is just because there's a setting we'll want to look at some point, because
Okay.
when the back, you did the backup of the card, the
Mm-hmm.
back kind of rough sketch of the card, the color of that looked exactly the way that we're hoping it turns out. But if you notice, I
All
don't
the
know if
color
it'll
was
be
jacked up on all
obvious.
the cards when I brought them into InDesign.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it'll be noticeable on YouTube, but if we watch the playback, you can kind of tell.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they've been like they've got a different color
Yeah.
treatment slightly, or setting in the front of the cards, which dulled the color actually a
So
little bit.
so that was the case as soon as I imported the Photoshop file. So the card backs in the game, that was direct from your Photoshop file. I like duplicated stuff and exported from there. But when I
Hmm.
linked in InDesign the Photoshop file, it placed it in, and it looked duller like right away.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at that. I know
Okay.
there's ways around that,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't worry about it right now. I was just curious, but
Yeah.
anyways.
We'll probably have to just restart on my files for like when we do final stuff, because I'm pretty sure I've just everything's so
Oh,
janky in
dude, I
there.
need
So
to. Well, due to our conversation the other day, I'm going to. I know this is you were. I'm gonna be recreating the cards as
right.
well in a way, because of that issue
Well,
with
I scaled down, and I think it's actually okay. I'll have to show you that. You can decide. But um
some stuff will be recreated, but
okay. Anyway, that was some technical stuff. We got it up and running. The game was fully there. We had all the components. Um so let's go over so we talked about kind of general thoughts. So let's go over, Jesse, what were your favorite pieces of the game, and what, and then also like I guess least favorite, or like what didn't work well for you.
Sure. I think my favorite piece of the game was probably the skill tree
Hmm.
that gets built out as you level up. Um, through when you for those who aren't familiar with the mechanics of the game yet, when you craft the certain blueprints, you get a certain number of XP for each one that you craft, and you get different amounts for the different advances or levels. And then you move through a skill tree, which allows you to pick things like or 2 extra scrap, or you get to re-roll a dice once per turn, those types of things. So it was interesting because at one point during the game, Steven was like, "Yeah, I think I'm doing a bunch of utility with like a little bit of combat mixed in." And that was the same thing that I was doing, but we were kind of doing that in different points of our level up, so that ended up having or making it so that we had a different build essentially.
Yeah.
So that was cool. It's definitely customizable. I also really liked that it felt like the three of us were kind of taking a different build approach, similar to like RPG aspects, where you
Sure.
kind of have a build like a barbarian or a rogue, or, high mobility, high defense, those kinds of things. Because we kept talking throughout the game like how much armor I had. And of course, that was partially of how the cards fell to me, but it's also the way I wanted to play because I felt I was probably the least familiar with the game, and so was not sure how how or when I was
Sure.
going to make those attacks. So that was very cool.
Real quick,
I
Ralph,
like that a lot.
what upgrades did you go for? What was your main build?
Well, I went combat.
Okay.
Mainly that was my primary thing. I think I ended up maxing out combat, and then when I maxed it out, I shifted focus to dabble a little bit in utility.
Okay.
Mm.
So none of us really touched defense skill tree,
That's
did we?
true.
I wonder
Although
if it's
Jesse his cards would have maybe worked pretty well with defensive perks.
Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if
I guess
maybe they weren't
I think
beneficial enough for like a defense build in that regard.
well, what did the defense have? I think one of them was like the additional scrap or whatever,
So
like steel scrap or something like that.
no, that was in a combat one. So defense
Okay.
was you get +1 XP for crafting defense items.
Mm.
The second one was you can play a second companion. And then the third one was +2 health to all of your companions or something.
Mm.
So I guess it's almost more companion skill tree and not so much
Yeah.
like defensive.
Well, the
I don't think
+1
lack of value.
XP, pretty good.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it could definitely have some good stuff in there.
And now having a grasp for the game now, and you explaining the perks and defense, I probably am looking back at that like, well, I know in the moment I was thinking like, but I really need in this moment I need to attack, I need more damage, but it probably would have been more beneficial to me to do more of the defense one so that I could capitalize on the cards I was playing.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I think the one feedback though was, and we talked about it on the stream as well, was the armor. Like what exactly will the end result of the effect of the armor be? Basically it was that the armor's role currently is strictly to negate damage. Like you don't take damage, but you may still have a side effect of losing scrap, or you may also become afflicted or
corrupted.
What was sorry, corrupted.
Yeah, you're good.
But for me, the traits of armor just as a thing made me feel like, well, maybe we shouldn't be corrupted. So that was just something we kind of hashed out there.
I think we landed on that. At least next time we play the game, we're gonna try it. That armor does negate corruption. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. That's the thing too. Playtesting, like adjust a couple things here and there every time we play. See if it works. See if it doesn't.
Right.
And go from there. It's interesting though, just like how different the game has played every time I've done it. This was our 13th playtest, and
oh wow, I didn't realize you'd playtested it that many times.
Yeah, that's including like the ones that just Trevor and I did for the first couple iterations of the game.
Sure.
Which we didn't play with anyone else until we tested ourselves like 5 or 6 times. And then we've done a bunch with different people more recently. Now this virtual one. And then so I try to do like a version of the game and then test it a couple times in that version to then kind of see how things play out, because it's different for every time. So like this one now, I'm bringing it to a board game convention this weekend, and hopefully find some people to play test with there. I'll make some adjustments based on what happened last night. A couple things that I'm like, that clearly doesn't work with this style of the game. But it kind of brings out the best and worst pieces of the game by playtesting. However, it's also interesting because the games are different every time. Like this game, no one played any pulse items, which pulse items remove charges from cards. So it kind of like someone could get a big beefy thing out there and get to use it once, but then they hit with a pulse thing and then it takes one off. So like then they only get that one shot at it. So there's a lot of like back and forth variability on this kind of stuff. And we had not a ton of corruption happen. Like there's a little bit in this game, but I've had
other corrupted at all.
Yeah, I've had others where like everyone was corrupted multiple turns in a row, and like yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how that all that plays out. But yeah,
and I think you can also. I was just gonna say, I think you can view that as like replay value.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
if you know going into it that game is going to be unique, pretty much every time you play it, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like you can kind of choose your build. So you could go in and be like, hey, I'm going to try to do more defensive this time. Or another time, be like, hey, let me just see what happens if I try to just go purely offensive and just, you know, just see what happens. So, and some of that too, like might depend on what you draw. You know, you draw cards and like, you might be like, okay, well, this is what I have this time. I'm just going to start going this direction. And that could kind of dictate how you play that game. So it's like, you have some agency in it, but at the same time, you know, you can adapt and play differently, and that, you know, changes some stuff. So Ralph, favorite thing and what needs work?
Well, I liked the decision making, and the systems and kind of the tactile feel of what you're doing with the forge. It felt like, I made a weird comparison, but it felt like building up an attack plan and then executing that attack plan. You know, that's kind of what it felt like to me, which is similar to certain like RTS games.
Real-time strategy.
Yeah. It's obviously not the same thing. So, but it's just kind of the thing that it reminded me of. But yeah, I mean, it was so cool because every single turn you have a sort of myriad of decisions that you can make that will alter the course, that could alter the course of the game. And it's very strategic and it's very engaging to kind of work with. So that was probably my favorite part of it. As far as like notes I had with, like you asked about major issues, I don't really know if I have any major issues. The only thing that I like, major issues, you know, the only thing that I think I ran into that I don't know what you could do about this. I had an idea, but I actually think it's a bad one after I slept on it.
Okay.
But like I ended up with a lot of cards in my hand by the end of the game that you just know you're not going to use. And like maybe you'll rack up lower level cards, but then you've advanced past that and you kind of want to focus on the higher level cards. And so, you know, it feels like you get too many cards maybe. And the potential solution that I had kind of thought of, I was like, what if there's like part of your action is part of an action is the ability to like scrap an item for scrap or something like that. Like, you know, discard a card, so you can't use it, but you can get a certain amount of scrap. But the thing is, with my playstyle, I ended up with so much scrap that I don't know. I think there's enough scrap probably going around already, so I don't know if that's the best solution. But that was the only thing that I thought of, honestly, while playing it, where I was like, I guess I just don't need all these cards that I have. It feels like I have too many. But
and on the other side of the scrap, though, I felt like I didn't have any. Like I felt constantly
some
like,
of it's playstyle.
I have to gather because I need more scrap.
Yeah.
So I think I think we talked about yesterday too, like giving the players agency was something you were talking about, Steve, and like having that option to potentially trash a card for a scrap would be another choice that I don't know. I think that's a really cool idea. I think that's a cool idea.
Wow.
So 2 things. I actually had that idea for a long time.
Really?
And like,
sure.
well, we didn't end up doing it because you wouldn't get cards as frequently. And in the past, this is actually something I wanted to talk to Trevor about after the last playtest, like the last round, was that like you had a lot fewer cards because there wasn't like a gather action where you'd get scrap and cards. You had to specifically choose to draw blueprints as one of your actions. And you'd still get 2, but like you weren't doing it nearly as often. And so you didn't have like a hand of cards. However, I'd still have cards where I'm like, I know I'm not going to play this. Like, it's just not how I'm trying to do things right now. And so I thought about, like maybe you could, maybe on that refresh action, we could add like another thing. It was like, hey, like you refresh, you roll for your cores, you can trade in, blueprints for scrap, and you can repair corruption or something. That's an option.
The only thing is you'd want to make it weaker than gathering as far
it'd be
as...
like 1 scrap per blueprint.
Yeah.
So, and another thing too, like with the amount of scrap, I felt like I had a ton of scrap too. I'm thinking about with the gather action, if we make that only like 2 scrap, or maybe we change the scrap steal like to be a little bit less. Because especially if you're attacking multiple times, you were like taking like 6 scrap from people. Like if it's steal 1 scrap per attack, like you're still getting a little bonus of scrap each time.
And it raises a good question too of like, is the gather the issue? Or is maybe that scrap steal need to be just 1? Maybe it's the scrap steal is really strong and needs to be dialed back a little bit. Because like I said, I felt like I never had any of this scrap that I needed. So, but I think that is a cool thing to be able to say about the game because we each had like different approaches.
Yeah, the cores balance out the scrap a little bit. Because so even if you're overflowing with scrap, which I was... if you don't have the cores, then you there's only so much you can do.
That's true.
That was a nice counterbalance for a lot of the game, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I think went well. That was like I said, that was our first time testing the permanent shade cores. Whereas before it'd be like on your if you crafted, it was an action to craft blueprints. It was a separate action to craft cores. It was a separate action to gain bonus scrap. It was a separate action to draw cards, separate action to repair corruption, and another separate one for something else to fill your cores. And
Dude, it's so weird to me that is a new addition to the game because it feels like the game was made for that mechanic.
It has only been that was the first time testing that. It's all been theory crafting before.
It was great.
I felt good about it.
That felt probably like the most natural part of the game.
Amazing. It's taken so long to get there.
It feels like, oh no, that felt like a natural part of the game.
Okay.
And it also, because when people sit down to play a game, they take experiences from other games. What other board games have I played? What other card games have I had? And how do they function?
Sure.
And that to me felt like a staple mechanic.
Interesting.
I think the only feedback from there that we talked about yesterday was sometimes it felt like you didn't necessarily really need more than 3 cores. Because that's all you needed to, and maybe that was just the game that we played,
Right.
I haven't played it enough to be able to say, well, the second time I played, I was jonesing for more. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's something that will come out to light with more playtesting.
And it was a big barrier to get more cores. You had to pay 5 scrap, which is a huge chunk. Even when we had a ton, like it's a huge chunk from what you have. Yeah. You have to pay 5 scrap to get that permanent core, which I wanted. And so it accomplished what I was going for, which is before it was 2 scrap per core, but you'd fill it and then you'd use it, it'd go away. So you'd be like gathering scrap so that next turn you could craft a bunch of cores so that you could fill them, so that the next turn you could craft a bunch of things. And so the pace of crafting I feel like was quicker in the previous version because you had more cores at your disposal more often. And since there was a higher barrier to entry to get more cores here, we weren't rolling to fill them as often. And when we are, you're getting, even if you get doubles, you're like getting 3. Whereas before, like you could get like 6 cores filled at once or 7 cores filled at once because you would have those there and you'd stockpile and then try to fill them all. That ended up being super broken because some people, like I told you guys, like saved like 15 and then would keep trying to get doubles, and then all of a sudden they had like so many cores. So I might try to adjust the cost of cores down to like 4. So it's just like, it's not quite up there. So it's more like 4 scrap is more like advanced level blueprint, whereas like 5 is pushing into mastercraft level of how much it cost with scrap.
And I think that definitely ties into what you were saying about crafting feeling a little slow, at least in the last game we played. So if it's, even just that one more scrap might bump that up a little bit.
Right. Yeah, it might just be enough of a change because it did feel like the permanent cores overall felt great. I think they were
Mm-hmm.
super. I think they were great. But I also feel like I want you to be able to have more cores so that you can feel like you can craft more things as you go. Like the cores is almost another version of ramp in the game, where it's like, hey, I now have, as you go, you keep crafting more cores. So like later on, you might have 5 cores, and so if you do hit that doubles, like you got 5 full cores there. You can craft 2 advanced and a basic or something,
Yeah.
in one go. And so like we'll have to see. Maybe we keep it at 7. We'll keep it at 7 for now, obviously, until we play to see if anyone ever actually gets to 7. But if it
Mhm.
still sticks around, like you guys had 3, I had 4. Or Jesse, did you end up having 4 at the end, or just your 3?
Yes, he had 4.
I think at the very end I did have 4
Okay.
because I needed them to craft the 2
That's
advanced
right.
cards to go for the nuke.
Yeah,
What was it called?
the power surge.
Power Surge.
Yeah, Power Surge.
Um,
Almost had it. You guys are gonna have to watch the recording,
That's right.
or at least the very end
guys,
of the recording.
oh
to
my
see how
goodness,
it
I didn't
ends
even
up.
start with this. Oh yeah, yeah, watch the recording. But also, I won
Yeah.
my first game. I won the
Oh,
first
yeah.
game ever after
Spoilers.
13 playtests. Yeah, sorry for that. You don't have to watch the 3-hour long video now, but anyway, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And it gets tense near the end. Like we're getting close. Things are doing heavy damage. That freaking ballista
Yeah,
bow,
I took
man.
7 damage in one hit. Get out.
Dude, that felt so good. Like,
Yes, for one of us.
yeah, but like it's like near the end of the game. You like it's coming to an end. The thing does 4 damage on its own, but then you can use an extra core, that's kind of a costly price to give it an extra 2 damage boost. And I did that, but then I also had the +1 to all my attacks from the combat skill tree. So I just went from a 4 attack to a 7 with this like beast of a weapon. And like,
Dude, the way that different systems interlock, like throughout the whole
it's
game,
crazy.
is one of the coolest things.
Ah,
Like,
It's
thanks.
very
I had
cool.
at one point I had a weapon that I was shooting at people and then using my other item to repair that item
Yeah, that was
because
cool.
the other item was really good.
Dude,
So,
Yeah.
I know, like
Yeah.
seeing you guys use these things in different ways, like how I envisioned them being used, I'm like, this is perfect. Like this is what I was thinking, like what Trevor and I were thinking as we were designing these cards, and like seeing it being played out, like how I like thought it should and how it would like should work is awesome.
Yep. And I had a cool combo with one of the defensive items that had a lot of armor, but it gave +1 to all my attacks. So when I finally did play
Right.
a card that actually did attack damage, that was good.
Yeah. And so
There
even
wasn't
though you're
enough
doing
armor in the world to save me.
even though you were doing a defensive build, like you still had a combat bonus
Mm-hmm.
from that. And so like, yeah, some
Yep.
of the things we want, that was one of the main things. We didn't want any cards to feel like they didn't have value.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't want to draw a card and be like, I don't want to craft this. Like maybe in that moment, you're like, I don't need
Yeah.
this right now. But in another game, in another situation, it could have value and could be beneficial.
And the synergies caused important choices to happen, I just want to say, because there was one turn where like I could have blocked a bunch more damage, but my cores were full. So if that item was destroyed, I didn't get to use the 3 free core fill mechanic. So like I
Yeah.
took a bunch of hit points because of that. And I mean, I guess it was the wrong choice because I ended up losing, but that decision felt heavy.
Yeah. That's been of the different playtests, like there's been moments that I've like locked into my memory of people like, oh man, like tough decisions is what someone said one time near the end of the game.
Yep.
Or some like, another similar thing happened, where you're just like, it's in that tension, especially getting near the end of the game where you're like, there's meaning to my choice. Like it's going to affect what happens. So yeah, that's been interesting. Some of my some quotes that I wrote down last night. At one point, Jesse said that he really liked how the synergy is felt as you go. That what we were just talking about. You like that you could do a build, like you could do like a tank build, like lots of armor, things like that. I don't remember. I don't know what that means there. But then, Ralph, you said something about you liked the like you were managing your forge or something. You're like, this is something weird, but you're like, I like that I can just do like what was the term? Um, like one thing you said is like you really liked the systems and how the systems felt to work really well, but then you liked the aspect of like I'm just upkeeping my forge, managing my forge.
Base building.
Yeah, kind of like that. So like as you're playing, it's like you're organizing your scrap on the side to like be in a certain
Oh,
order
oh,
because you're like maintaining your workspace and all that.
yeah. Watch the stream. Easily, my side of the table was the most organized. I had
Well,
all my stuff perfectly laid out.
Jesse's was good too. Mine, I half organized stuff, but um, okay. What was your most memorable moment during the game? Is there some moment that stuck out to either of you? Nope. All right. Cool.
I would say quickly that just the weight of the decisions. The decisions feel meaningful, and it feels in that moment when you're picking your gather or your craft that you are like, I don't know. Should I
Sure.
craft right now because maybe I got to get
Hmm.
defense out or weapon out, or should I gather right now because I know I'm gonna need this scrap because I'm about to level up for the next type of card. Those decisions, even the little ones, feel impactful.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the memorable moment for me was sort of how the items play, and how you can kind of there's like emerging decisions through the items, like the wrench moment that I mentioned, where I have the wrench and I can repair my other great item with it as I'm using it. And yeah, that was, I mean, I took a pretty decisive defeat, but
Hmm.
I still felt like but it was super fun, and I still felt like I experienced a full game.
Sure.
Even taking a defeat, I experienced a lot of enough of the game to feel like it was a fulfilling experience, while also thinking, "Wow, there's so much I that this game has to offer that I haven't seen yet."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
And played very well on Tabletop Simulator too.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
It
it
worked
did.
out well.
And the power surge was a cool moment too. So.
That was cool. And somehow but I still survived it.
Yeah. I think that means
Yeah,
the
you
mechanic's broken.
survived it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But so after you got eliminated, Ralph, the game ended like 2 turns later.
yeah,
So, and that's kind of like, granted, there's going to be people that are just going to like, oh, that person's hurt. I'm just going to target them and then just like eliminate them right away. And so there's some element of like, yeah, you could just focus one person and just eliminate them. But let's be good sports and not do that, people. Because that's just not fun then. If you're just like, I'm just
yeah,
going to hit this one person. But potentially doing that might then put a target on your back. It's like, hey, this guy's being a jerk. Let's all take him out. So there's some things that will balance that out. But
yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, guys, on the playtest or
When can I play again?
I don't know.
That's all I'm thinking about.
I
Well,
mean,
figure it out.
we could just set up a time and just do it. Um,
Now that it's on there,
we don't even I don't want to. We don't have to record it, do anything. Like honestly, we'll probably get a better idea of how long the game would take and everything by just playing it. Yeah,
I would love
we'll
that.
find a time. That'll be fun. I want to get my brothers to play at some point too.
yeah.
And once we figure out some stuff and like get this version working well of the game, then I'll approach a 6-player playtest again. Because right now, with how it went last night, it was too slow. And if we did a 6-player playtest, it would just be so much more. So
Well, but
That'd be a
again,
full-on
some of
D&D
this,
sesh.
yeah,
right.
some of this is tabletop simulator. Just being,
Uh,
it's a little
Partially,
more methodical. You pull like one thing, then you pull one thing. All that little extra time adds up over
it does.
time.
It does.
It's
And
true.
and also like as we were playing, talking through different things, and like Jesse and I were talking through like the armor stuff, and like, does that make sense with how it works, and like what would make sense? And then we were also chatting with people on Twitch a little bit too, some of our friends. So like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
there was some other
Thanks
stuff
for
going
those
on.
who showed up
Yeah.
for that.
Shout out to Mike and my brother Eric and the other guy, Frytech Warfare, who said like 2 things and left. But
Thank you, Frytech.
he's like, "Did you make this game?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we were explaining it, and then I think he was gone. So anyway, it was good. It was a fun time. Overall, awesome experience. Like I said, I've been working on this game since the beginning, and like since all the terrible versions, and I had so much fun playing it. I just like, even though I've just been in it for so long, and I know the issues and I know all the stuff, I was just playing to play. It wasn't even like I was trying to break something or do something just specific. It was just like I was just playing the game and having a good time, which is cool that I can do it with my own game. So,
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Fun factor high.
that's right. Thanks for jumping in last night, Jesse. Ralph,
My pleasure.
Glad you could finally play it too. And if you want to keep up to date on what we're doing, people, keep listening to this podcast on all of your listening locations, as well as go to bitwafflegames.com to find a link to our Discord, sign up for our monthly newsletter, which I will be writing in the next few days for the end of this month. And follow us on Instagram at bitwafflegames. And there's a cat. Now you have to watch the video to see
Ralph
Ralph's
has
cat.
a kitty.
What's your cat's name?
His name is Doom.
Oh, that's right.
Doom. Okay. Nice.
Oh, nice. There you go.
I
See?
have my
Exactly.
Doom poster right up
Yeah,
here.
I've got a
It's way
Doom
off
shirt
camera,
on.
but
Amazing. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.